Okay, so week six in Introduction to Linguistics, we have I want to overview morphology and etymology, primarily morphology. And so we've had all these different, really kind of went in with phonetics and phonology, and then we went into syntax and grammar, and now we're going into morphology. And then in the same kind of approach. So one of your CSLO is to be able to construct morphological analysis on English word structure and um, identify and exemplify parts of speech. We did last week, but it'll come overlap into this major versus minor morphemes, lexical versus functional morphemes, and inflectional versus functional morphemes. This actually seems like district made it. That should be derivational right there. Exemplify the morphophonemic peculiarities in or between English morphemes. So, like, there's basically, I'll explain it more, but there's 8 inflectional morphemes in English. And I want to do something like if we look at morphology, it's like, how do you break down a word? So, look at the word morphology itself. So, if we look at morphology, we know biology. I don't know. You can make all kind of, mixology. I don't know. It's the study of. We know the ology part, right? And you've heard morph before. Well, morph usually means like the change, like metamorphosis or, you know, morphed into something. Now the original Greek, morphe means form or shape, right? And means form or structure, right? Lots of words with morph. Amorphous, shapeless. Anthropomorphism. Anthropo means man. So to change something that isn't a man into the having the shape or characteristics or form of a man, that's anthropomorphism. Like if you do it with God, if you impose human characteristics upon God, that's theologically anthropomorphism. Though in literature, if you make a horse talk and it can use speech like an animal, I mean like a human being, that's anthropomorphism. Anyway, it's all over the place. Um, the definition given, there's a couple of good definitions here. Um, in Merriam-Webster online, one of the sources I want you to use for looking up things. Now they give you, how is it used in biology, and you will see it in other sciences. But in English, sorry, in linguistics, a study and description of word formation such as inflection, derivation, and compounding in language. Inflection and derivation are important. Compounding, I wouldn't. Compounding is part of morphology, but one of many ways of word formation. Compounding is when you join two or three more words. Um, to create a new word. So, um, morphology. Now we have our linguistic definitions, um, and um, you know, I'll explain that very thoroughly in a minute. What we have for this week, little bit of a less of a workload compared to last week. Last week it was like grammar and syntax. It's so much. And again, you can take undergraduate and graduate courses. That syntax is a lot, mostly because how many of us really remember grammar? Not a lot of people, unless you were an ELD, ESL student, or you're studying other languages outside of English, so you're more used to using grammatical terminology. But this week is a lot easier, and I probably all needed that. So, here, I mean, some of this is really redundant. Um, but you can click here, you go straight to the week 6, and it'll lay everything out for you. So, and it's going to change because I'm going to put the page, I'm going to put the video I'm making here and some questions here. But the first thing is reading, etc., etc. Readings, questions, video, study guide answers on morphology and etymology. And I'm going to go over that in a minute. I want to just do the crash courses really quick. And again, you can take notes. And I do, there are some things that I want you to notice. Like if you see, it says, it's an important terms and concepts, affixes, type of morphemes, bound and unbound, right? Because she is covering those. And I want you to catch it.
Hi, I'm Taylor and welcome to Crash Course Linguistics. According to the word count feature in a document, A word is the thing with spaces around it. That's a useful definition if we're just trying to figure out how long an essay should be, but it's not a very good guide to defining what counts as a word. For example, doghouse is generally written without a space, while rabbit hole is written with one, but they feel like they should both be words. After all, sometimes people write doghouse with the space, and we could totally start writing rabbit-hole or even rabbit hole completely smushed together. Also, just because a word like hangry isn't in your dictionary doesn't mean it's not a word or that I'm not feeling it right now. Man, I should have eaten a snack before this shoot. Anyway, today we're going to talk about how a linguist would answer the question, what even is a word?
What is a word and
Because
what are
this phrase
meaningful
has a meaning
parts
that we can't
of a
big
word?
meaning and a small meaning. The big meaning of to a linguist, the word word has a big meaning and a small meaning. The big meaning of word is what we expect when we're looking something up in a dictionary. We'd expect to find a dictionary entry for rabbit hole because this phrase has a meaning that we can't figure out from the definitions of its individual parts. After looking up rabbit and hole, we wouldn't guess that rabbit hole means a place where a rabbit lives or a complicated or absorbing situation, like finding yourself down a Wikipedia rabbit hole at 2 a.m. after Googling what languages are spoken on the International Space Station. Its meaning is relatively unpredictable from its parts. Dictionary makers define one entry or unit as the largest unpredictable combinations of form and meaning. They call each of these units lexemes, or lexical items, because they're parts of a lexicon, which is another word for dictionary. In contrast, we wouldn't
Thumbs up again. We're going to talk about two types of free morphemes, meaning they can stand alone. There are lexical morphemes and there are functional morphemes. So lexical morphemes are almost unlimited. There's hundreds of thousands of them in a language, while functional morphemes are like your prepositions. There's only so many. There's only so many pronouns in a language. There's so many words. There's limited amounts of words that um, you have to use functionally. If you don't know those words, like the great polyglots, the people who historically spoke a lot of languages, if they went to study another language, what they would usually study first were those functional morphemes in the language. So how do you say with or he or she or other words like that in a language? Prepositions, pronouns, things like that. So lexical, however, just means your dictionary kind of now it's all your nouns and all your verbs and all your big category words that can kind of go on forever.
expect to find a dictionary entry for deep hole, because if we look up deep and hole, we can figure out the meaning of the two combined. It's predictable. So deep and hole are both lexemes, while deep hole is not. When we think about a phrase like falling down rabbit holes, this is where the small meaning of word comes in. Here we can break the sentence into parts. Falling down.
Okay, so I don't want to show all this. I was just wanting to introduce it. Now there's another part. Now she's doing the big part of morphemes. The thing is when you have the ing with falling home, that's what a lot of what the morphology part we're going to be looking at is covering. Um, Now, let me just go over this really quick. I want to do so. This first assignment I just added because I want to make sure everybody gets everything here, and it's probably better to download it. The formatting is just better, right? And you can fill it in. I made highlights and um, questions on morphology, and this is from Wikibooks, right? So you're just going to go here, and this is open source, um, and they're easy to answer, should be, but I want you to know these terms. And so morphology, the identification, analysis, and description of the structure of words, practiced by morphologists. So a morpheme is roughly defined as the smallest linguistic unit that has semantic meaning. It has a valid meaning in a language. So boy, can't be broken down into any none of those, but the B, the O, the Y, the BO, the OY, they're not meaningful in and of themselves in relation to the meaning boy. So it only has one morpheme. The word, however, like anti-government or anti-governmentalism, right? Anti, that's a prefix. Govern is the root, right? Ment is a suffix that comes after. It's made of three morphemes, right? So we have what we call, with morphemes, we have bound and free morphemes. Bound morphemes, they can't stand alone. They're affixes. Now, we usually know prefixes and we know suffixes, right? They're also, you know, some other ones. So here, so vowel morphemes are classified into two categories: derivational and inflectional morphemes. Derivational morphemes change the grammatical category or meaning of the word. If I put re, right? If I put d, uh, you know, if I put un, nis, li, like an adverb, etc., and so on, those are bound morphemes, suffixes or prefixes. Um, and so, I'm sorry, derivational morphemes, which are a type of, and then we have inflectional morphemes. So they didn't give you examples here. I will later, but there are 8 inflectional morphemes grammatically in English. Um, they don't change the meaning or grammatical category of the word, but use them to mark plurals like box, boxes, tense, ed like walk, walked, agreement, um, case, and so on. Okay, free morphemes can stand alone. There's two types. There's lexical and derivational morphemes. So, sorry, derivational and flexual. Sorry, free morphemes. Oh my gosh, my brain. Look, sorry. Lexical and functional morphemes. So, lexical morphemes, dictionary definition, represent the concepts of the message we wish to bring across. Ship, orange, president, the open set of words in a language. Um, Functional morphemes are functional words, determiners like and the, what we call articles as well, which are technically adjectives if you look at A parts of speech, but adjectives are less limited than the determiners, which are a subclass of, uh, of adjectives. Pronouns, he, she, it. Conjunctions, for and or, but or yet so, either or, neither nor, whatever, because and against are some examples. Those are functional ones. Um, Affixes are our workhorse morphemes in English. Suffixes and prefixes primarily. We have some infixes, but it's mostly like cussing. We don't bloody isn't really cussing. Uh, like, are you going to the concert night? Absolutely. Now it could be the F word right there, and that's what we do more in English. Um, oh, sorry, I didn't put a highlight here, but there's also circumfixes which go around. Um, so we have enlightened and in and enlightened, right? And emboldened, but we don't really have many of them in contemporary English, but you do have them in a lot of other languages. Um, if you study some other languages, you just keep, so there's all kinds of things going on. So, sometimes multiple affixations can take place. You can keep building them. The original word is a free morpheme. It's known as a stem or the root, and we can attach affixes. Um, so the root is govern, and you added anti-intergovernmentalist. All those it built. So this is when we're getting to morphology. It's not just the root word; it's all the ones you add to it. And some other, like if you go to, like root words are really important in some other languages. In Arabic, most words have a trilateral root. They have a 3-letter root. And if you want to look up words, you have to usually, to really accurately, you have to know that the trilateral root to go to the straight to the word. Um, and it's very important. Anyway, inflectional morphology. So English only has 8 inflectional morphemes. All of them are suffixes, all of them coming after. So the S, like boy, boys, plural boys. The apostrophe S, for the boys, like he owns it, the boys book. S after a verb, the boy eat. No, you say the boy eats. That's an inflection. ING is progressive. So he is walking. Walking, the ING, that's an inflectional morpheme. The perfect aspect. So perfect, you have or has or had, and you say en. So you say um, he has eaten. Right? You don't see he has ate. He has eaten. That's en is an inflectional morpheme. Ed indicating the past tense. He walked rather than, and we pronounce it with a t, right, instead of a d because the voiceless k walked. uh, and the voicelessness of the k affects the pronunciation of the D, so it's pronounced like a T. But anyway, the past tense, the ed, a regular past tense marker in English, and comparatives and superlatives. So bigger and biggest, right? Those are all inflectional. Those are the 8 inflectional categories. They can vary with irregulars, right? As we all know. But and these are not just, inflectional. Here's some inflectional morphemes in Spanish for gender and number. So number 9, you got tense, you got mood, you got person, um, you got number, um, and they mentioned like in other languages you have plurals for two people. So if I say, um, you know, two, it's in Arabic of something, it's different than like the word, the word itself could be different. The noun, for example, if I have two of something, and then how I conjugate it with the verb is different. I can make a form that has to match with the two. Though people don't usually do it that much in normal speech, but it is like that. So you have number, you have gender, um, you know, in language, which is, and then you have case. Are they the subject, nominative? Are they generative, possession, indirect object, dative, whatever, whatever. Okay, so I have a long thing on derivational morphology, but you don't need to know all these words. Like, well, okay, you don't need to know concatenative, yeah, that was concatenative. No, I don't even know how to say it. Concatenative, concatenative, concatenative. Don't even know if that's right because we didn't use it. Actually, when she was talking about lexemes and um, things like that earlier, that's actually how we used to say it. I was taking it from computer stuff. Well, that's how we used to talk about it. So, whatever. Um, you don't have to know the term, but you need to know about a few kind of ways in which you create words. And one of them, you know, um, is clipping, like advert and ad or clip from advertisement. There's a special type of it called hypocorism, where you say like instead of um, Australian, Aussie, television, telly. They say barbecue, Barbie, vegetable, veggie, right? That's the, I don't know why they associate it with child clock necessarily. Sometimes it's child clock, it's not. Other definitions don't say that. That's just what the Wikipedia said. Back formation, we'll cover that later. Um, After back formation, they talk about this is what they call conversion. When you take a word, I don't like the example chair as a noun to chair as a verb because I don't think we use it that much. To chair something is to like lead it, like as being the chairman or chairperson, and that's how they're using it. We don't think. I don't know if I think about that. Whatever. Ablaut, don't worry about that. Reduplication, don't worry about that. Okay, an acronym. We should all know acronyms. Any area of study you go into, you're gonna have to know acronyms. And a little thing about allomorphs, basically an allomorph, and there's a video on this, but it's kind of like in phonology, we talk about allophones, and it's below phonemes in the same way you kind of have a category of a morpheme and you have variation. So when I was going over the inflectional ones, like, sometimes you have the base form, like boy, boys with S, but you have like ox, oxen. So you have other variation, and that's even, well, I'm talking about the more confusing ones when you get into irregulars, and there's so many irregular, if you ever teach ESL, so many irregular verbs. So they give you like, say, for the word cats has an S, uh, there's two morphemes, the cat and the S, which signifies the plural. Um, has two, but the S and the ES are basically different because they're allomorphs. Um, so, just kind of want to introduce that idea. Um, okay, etymology is a study of origin of words. They give you the word history of the word today, all the way to say PIE. That's Proto-European. What they think is the root of English before it was like way back beyond writing. With English, it's not that long because we haven't written for that long. But you can trace. They try to trace a word back to its origins, and then sometimes it gets hypothetical. Okay, so I made a whole video here. If you click on it, it'll take you to it. And I made a video, 15-minute video, and you can fast forward it. Okay, so this is for the chapter on morphology or the week on morphology and etymology. Okay, so that's a little bit weird to see myself talking about myself. Yeah. Okay, so I go over all these, right? Compounding. Uh, this is a word formation, a long word, the back formation, right? Um, I'm sorry, it's not back formation, word formation with the Y. And they were saying the other one, it was kind of like, what do you say, childish or whatever, kids' language. Oh, I put the link and it didn't upload. Okay, sorry. It's in the other one. I have it open here, but so that's just hypocorism, word derived from the name of a person or place. That's an eponym. And I explain it, it's a 15-minute video and I go over all these. So this is what you need to know for the midterm and the final. When I give you these study guides, they're actually, they're on the midterm and the final. So embedded in this here. So you have the first questions from the wiki book, and then you have a second part. It's all from the video. And then if you ever want to practice these things on your own, which I would advise using this, the wiki Kahoot, right? So I wonder if I could. So word process, a longer word is reduced with a Y or IE at the end. It's hypocorism, right? Two more words, waterbed, right? That is a compounding, um, right? Study of the, I hope I can see the image, eponyms, right? Uh, Achilles heel, Freudian slip. There's a guy, chauvinism. Like it comes from one dude. He must have been a really bad dude. Um, you know, so eponym, neologism, um, borrowing, right? Some of the language, English stuff, borrowed so many acronyms, so many in English, act formation. And you can pause the Kahoot and look at the images I put in here. This is actually like a Calvin and Hobbes cartoon about converting. I like to verb nouns. What? I like to verb words. I take nouns and adjectives and use them as verbs. Remember when access was a thing? Now it's something to do. It got verbed. Verbing weirds language. Maybe we can eventually make language a complete impediment to understanding. But really, it's something that's always going on. Shakespeare does it a lot. It's really cool. Um, Blended words, bromance, frenemy, uh, affluenza, etc., etc. Reducing, clipping. So instead of examination, you say exam. Gym instead of gymnasium, you say gym. Instead of omnibus, you say bus. Instead of laboratory, you say lab. Instead of hamburger, you say uh, burger. When I got all the way to bound morphemes, right? The beginning of the word, that's a prefix, right? And I kind of go morpheme, and sort of the beginning in the middle of a word, right? That's an infix. Um, Bounded free morphemes, right? Um, Lexical morpheme. I'm suffocating. I hadn't seen that in forever. Okay, so here's a little chart, right? If you have a bound morpheme, so this actually gives you derivational ones. Then it gives you inflectional. There's only 8 in the inflectional. So how do you categorize them? So ish, that's a derivational one. The content, those are uh, lexical morphemes, right? And anyway, I don't have to, just so you know, right? Conjunction or preposition, it's a free morpheme, functional, right? Um, yeah. So then there are some linguistics derivation, Okay, so there's some of the stuff. If you click on that, you can practice all these. You get them down, um, and all the rest is pretty self-explanatory in this week's work. I'll go over it really quick because I tend to not be as brief as I should be. Um, some of the essentials of linguistic stuff. I just have a few questions. Some of them will help you, like read it, watch the videos, and then do the exercises, and it will help you to understand things. Um, but I think it's sometimes she goes a bit deeper than we need to for this class. And so because of it, I'm using other stuff. Because I really wish she would just like you can go to it and you could just turn pages instead of doing this weird. See, it's spread out all over the place. Now, if you want to get, go really deep into stuff, inflectional morphology in some indigenous languages. First Nation languages in general, a lot of this stuff is kind of good on that. But I don't know. There is so much. I should have put more questions in there probably, but I didn't, and it's fine. Um, but that's pretty straightforward from Catherine Anderson's book. Um, Crash course is straightforward. Etymology. So there's a couple of videos in etymology, 20 points, take good notes. And then, yeah, okay. Research on the etymology of 5 words. And then, so this is your discussion board for the week. You know, give you a couple of resources that I mentioned in the page overview too. 5 words with etymologies for basic credit, and then you know, respond to peers' posts for more formal points. In your response, please highlight what you found interesting and informative, and be cool about it. Okay, so but this here for this assignment, I'd like you to look up 5 words of your choosing. Don't care what they are. Make them interesting to you so you can remember the word history or find a word history. They can be formal words, study words, cuss words, whatever. Copy and paste the word, definition, and etymology, and a paragraph or a few sentences on what you have found in your research. So I've read whole essays on word hysteria from feminists, including linguists. I know English people, and you know it's kind of crazy because um, well, hysteria is a word that was made up in 1801, and it was coined in medical Latin as an abstract noun from hystera, womb, right? Which is related to like uterus, right? From Proto-Indo-European utero, variation of utero, abdomen, woman, womb, stomach, related to uterus. Originally defined as a neurotic condition peculiar to women and thought to be caused by a dysfunction of the uterus. So unhealthy no emotion or excitement, and it linked to it was kind of misogynist in its origin, the word. So New Latin from English hysteric, adjective from Latin hystericus, from Greek hysterikos, from hystera womb, from the Greek notion that hysteria was peculiar to women and caused by a disturbance of the disturbances in the uterus. They were really not cool about women, the Greeks. They were really, yeah, it was tripped out. I read a whole essay in this from a feminist scholar who was talking about the patriarchal history of the word some time ago. And, you know, when you look at like, I have an entire book called The N Word, which looks at the history of the use of that word and by colonizers and how it's a really important word that doesn't cease to provide really um, kind of you know horrible, meaningful material. Oh, if you're interested in or not, I don't usually like.
I
I
sent
don't
you the email a
usually
while ago.
recommend. There's not that many great history movies. There's not a lot of great linguistics movies, though I found that it was really interesting at um, Arrival had a linguist trying to talk to aliens, and she was talking about the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis, which is very problematic. But Sapir-Whorf, they kind of anyway, is deterministic. Like your language determines how you think and see the world, is what Edward Sapir and Whorf were arguing, and I don't know how it exactly related to aliens, except for aliens the way they have a whole different framework for language, and they were communicating. Anyway, it was in that movie. You don't see a lot of linguists in it, but this is The Professor and the Madman is from a book. The Professor and the Madman is a great book, and it's about the Scottish autodidact, self-taught guy who took over what was the Oxford English Dictionary, which was I love if you're a linguistics and English nerd, you want your own copy of the Oxford English Dictionary, which is a dictionary of the history of every word in the English language in its first appearance and tracing its appearance and its meanings. And I've always wanted my own copies of that. I thought it was fascinating, to look at the history of words. And so this is a really big thing in the 19th century. And so there was a professor, Scott's professor. He's played by Mel Gibson. The only time I'll kind of say this is good history for Mel Gibson. The Patriot is so terrible, as far as not historical. Apocalypto, it's yeah, so bad historically. Like Mayan civilization as a civilization in the big centered areas. I mean, Mayans are still around, obviously, but it collapsed hundreds of years before Europeans came. So them seeing an apocalypto Europeans at the end that's not how that went. Um, you know, Braveheart, Scottish history. I mean, like, one of the big things with William Wallace was the Battle of Stirling Bridge. They just called it Battle of Stirling. They don't have the bridge. They're dressed like wearing wattle, like the blue and all that. They hadn't done that for like, I don't know, 800, 1,000 years. Um, it just everything was out of place, and I mean, a lot of anyway, it was just crazy stuff. But this is really good. He did a good job in here, and it's very accurate to the source material. The book is way better, but the book is way better because it has more of the histories of words and it integrates some of the story. Which is a crazy story. I'll just play this 2 minutes.
Inmate number 742, assigned to Block 2.
We have been attempting to make this dictionary for the last 20 years, and I submit that the extraordinary, the unconventional, Mr. Murray, is the solution and our salvation.
The task is gigantic.
And impossible.
There is a way.
We'll ask them to read in search of the words that we want and get them to write the word on a slip of paper.
So this is the good doctor. I'm proud to make your acquaintance, sir. I cannot believe my eyes.
Aye, partners, word for word.
My entire life, all that I pursued has been in preparation for this.
You think I'm insane?
You do experience yourself as being under threat.
I only need books.
Our gathering so far, we've only just started.
William Minor will be struck from all acknowledgements.
What are you so afraid of?
But a bad man can be redeemed.
Mr. Churchill! If you believe that every individual life deserves its own chance, you must set him free, or he will perish.
When I read, I can fly out of this place on the backs of books. I've gone to the end of the world on the wings of work.
We are linked now.
Brothers. An American and a Scot. One Oxford, one Yale. One brilliant, one mad.
But which is which?
Mr. Murray, we are watching with a concerned eye.
Watch then, and be amazed.
Why are you not in?
It's a great book and a movie. You know, if you have time, watch it. Yeah, it's kind of crazy. Sean Penn's character, the doctor, he medical doctor. He served in American Civil War, and he had to brand this captured Confederate, and a space, and saw a lot of horrors. He had really bad PTSD, so he thought people were chasing him to try and kill him. So he murdered an innocent person when he was in the UK, and because he was crazy, and he was crazy. I mean, whatever you want to call it. I mean, he's mentally ill because of the trauma he had suffered. I mean, saying crazy is a little bit, I don't like that. It's inadequate to think about. Anyway, that was true, and he was in a mental hospital, and he helped out the professor who was compiling the entire OED, and it's really great. This is, there's so many words that you can look up, and words and power. We're going to look later at critical discourse analysis and how words are used, right? If you start looking at, when I'm making this, there's it's a week after the Harris-Trump debates, and the use of the word immigrants and immigrant invasion, and the trying to, like, the lie that Haitian immigrants were eating dogs and cats, right? The way in which you slandered an immigrant group, a racial group, a nation, with this kind of doubling and tripling down upon historic racism, um, against Black folks, against immigrants, uh, and against Haitians, specifically. I mean, in the sense that Haitians, they're the only they're the only nation that was, like, the only group of enslaved people that ever rose up against their enslavers and created their own free republic, the Haitians. And not only did they do that in 1804, after defeating, Napoleon, the French, the Spanish, the British, and the Americans, right? These formerly enslaved people, their generals, Toussaint Louverture and on Dessalines, all these, they also inspired, like when Simon Bolivar went to Haiti after failed revolution attempts against the Spanish, they gave him money, and they gave him um, all kinds of other support, and they said, but you have to free enslaved people. And Bolivar did that in South America, right? And this is why, and he helped to inspire, and the Haitians helped to inspire the Mexican Revolution, right? And so Mexico, one of the greatest generals, Vicente Guerrero, was the second president. He was Black. In 1828, he got rid of slavery in Mexico, way before 1865 and the American Civil War. And anyway, Haiti had an effect on Central South America, the whole world, and the colonizing powers have waged a war against Haitians ever since, and lots of other immigrants. Anyway, and that's important to know when we talk about ESL and teaching ESL. I might start teaching Haitian refugees online ESL in the next few weeks. And so many words have these histories, and you start studying the words' histories, and it's like pretty amazing. So Which source? Okay, that's probably way too long. I just wanted to, make sure that I'm giving you your assignments. They're clear. I'll make a few questions on this, and next week should be a little more low key, right? There's not a lot. We're going to do English words and derivations next week, which is technically part of morphology, but I thought I'd stagger it a little bit as we come into week 9, we have the midterm. But that's in October. We have about 3 weeks. All right. Thank you for persisting through the video. I hope it's easy, and if you need anything, email me, please.